So, who wants to take a stab at the first question? Excuse me, guys. All right, so what's the benefit of putting something in the application controller? Who wants to take that one? Nara?
If you like a site like basic information, like you logged in and you return to the same site, it pulls up that information pretty much first before there's anything else.
Not quite, right?
All our controllers then inherit that method.
Yeah. So every controller inherits from application controller. So and they're all just classes. When one class inherits from another class, it gets all of that class's methods. So for instance, with active record, you inherit from that active record base thing, which has def create, def new, def update somewhere inside it, which lets all of your models do those same things. So if I have def authorize in my application controller, that means every other controller now also has def authorize. They all inherited it from the application controller. What is a before action? Anyone want to volunteer? Rebel?
What Nara starts saying, where before anything happens, you have to actually go there and make sure that the person is logged in before any of them.
Yeah. A little bit less specifically, a before action just happens before every controller action. So if I put something in the before action that just says puts hello, and that's my before action, whenever anyone goes to any root in my app, it's going to put hello out in my terminal. Adrian?
Can you use that inside of a method for like will it scope down to where you can use it if for some reason you needed to run inside of a method like some action before you did some other thing, you can use it kind of anywhere?
You can't use before action inside a method. You can really only use it like inside a class, not inside one of the methods in the class, just inside the class itself. Like how inside application controller, it's sort of like up at the top. It's not inside a method. You can only do it that way. The before method in this case was get current user. You can still call get current user inside a method. You just can't put before action inside a method. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. And the last one, this is the tricky one. What's the difference between params and session? Mohammed?
Params get saved to the database while session gets saved in the cookies.
Well, it's not really where it gets saved. That's a difference. Casey? Kind of both. So the params, the information in params, it comes from one of two places. It comes from the URL. So if I go to like /artist/32, that 32, that becomes one of the params. That's the ID. So now there's ID equals 32 inside my params. If I submit a form, so like when I'm creating an artist, one of the forms is, one of the fields is nationality. If in the form I type nationality Portuguese and click submit, then in params it now says nationality equals Portuguese. So params is information that comes either from the URL or from a form. It's the information that got sort of packaged up with a request that goes to a root. Sessions, on the other hand, isn't related to that. Sessions is just, a session variable is just a temporary piece of data that could be really anything. I mean, I could create, a session variable called wombat and set it equal to Muhammad. I could do whatever I want. A session variable is just a temporary place of storing data, not necessarily related to the database, right?
When you say temporary, you mean throughout the instance of one session, right?
Yes, so it's called a session variable because it only exists during that session. Usually a session ends when you quit your browser. So you like how when you go to your bank's website, if you close your browser and then you go back to your bank's website, you're not logged in anymore. Your session has expired. Also, if you're on your bank's website and you go off and make dinner for half an hour and come back, you're going to get a message saying you have to log in again, your session has expired. Your session expires after 30 minutes. So by default, a session expires when you close your browser, but you can say a session expires after however much time you want. You can say a session expires after 10 seconds if you want to. Or you could say it expires never. It's really up to you. Right?
If you had a session that expired in 10 seconds,
that would be a terrible YouTube site.
Yeah, if you have it expire on a time, is the time checked when you go to make another request, or does it automatically?
I don't actually know. That's a really good question. I'm not sure.
With bank websites, if you've been in app
Yeah, well, I think with that, it like sends an AJAX request every couple seconds to see if you're still logged in. I'm really not sure. That's a good question. So, Ryan.
I was just thinking, can you use like the timer in JavaScript to trigger a parameter or a change in the Ruby?
Hmm?
Like
Not
if
sure I
you wanted
understand.
something to expire in 10 seconds after setting up page, can you have JavaScript change a
Yeah, sure. You could send some sort of AJAX request or something that could like sign out the user or something. You could probably do that. All right. So questions about this chunk?
I guess when would you want to use session? Use a session.
Yeah, good question. Let's revisit that after we talk about cookies. But we're going to talk about cookies first, and then we'll talk about when you would use cookies and when you would use sessions. Anything else? Adrian?
So kind of what Ryan was saying, but I'm curious about this. If it was what Alexa was saying, where like every time you clicked on something or whatever, you're still active, so it's not going to, log you out. Would it be like an event handler that somehow Ruby would be aware of in JavaScript? Like, so if it's all moving forward, if everything edits the thing in front of it, if there was some kind of like, click on whatever, then, can Ruby see JavaScript?
So Ruby can't see JavaScript, but what can happen is that JavaScript can send a post request to Ruby. So Ruby and JavaScript can't directly talk to each other, but JavaScript can use this thing called AJAX, which we'll talk about 2 weeks from now, to send a message to Ruby. It's sort of like submitting a form, except without actually having to click on the submit button. It sort of does it behind the scenes. And so in that way, that's probably what happens when it like keeps you, when you say like, don't log me out. Yeah, that's probably what's happening. But yeah, JavaScript can't talk directly to Ruby in the same way that Ruby can't talk directly to Postgres. You need active record in there to sort of bridge the gap.
And Ruby can't talk to JavaScript either, it's a mutual can't talk to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Programming languages can't really talk to each other. You need to have some sort of mutual thing in there, some intermediary. All right, so why don't we break now for, let's just break for until 4:30. 4:30.